Hi, I'm Will Yeomans, and I'm a fellow at the Palestine Center. Today I had a chance to talk to Adam Shapiro, a filmmaker. He just put out a 6-part documentary called Chronicles of a Refugee. It's an overview of the Palestinian refugee experience, looking at Palestinian refugees in all different countries and organized along many different themes. So Adam, can you tell me a little bit about why you decided to make this film?
I'd say there were two direct experiences that I've had over the last 2 years, and things that I've witnessed that inspired the film, which was first and foremost working on trying to help Palestinian refugees from Iraq. And Palestinian refugees from Iraq, since the war in 2003, have come under tremendous violence. They've been targeted specifically because they're Palestinian and more or less are being expelled and cleansed from Iraq. They're stuck on the borders between Iraq and Syria. Others have been able to sort of smuggle or sneak their way out of Iraq and are ending up in really terrible circumstances around the world. And my work has been involved in trying to help them find countries to take them. The experience that they've had of not being able to find sanctuary in Arab countries in particular, and really essentially not having any international organization, NGO, even a Palestinian, the PLO, try and take responsibility and help these people. That void that was created is something that I've tried to fill to some extent to help. And sort of realizing and recognizing the issues that they're facing as Palestinians, as basically not just as stateless people, but people without any documents and without any party or any entity to take responsibility to help them, was, while it's specific right now to the Palestinian refugees of Iraq, it's something that Palestinians, of course, have experienced in different circumstances in different places historically. So that was one thing that got me thinking in terms of the issues that this community is facing right now aren't just specific right now for this community, but really affect the entire Palestinian population to different levels, of course. The second aspect was, or second experience was, the war and destruction of the Nahar camp in 2007 in Lebanon, which again displaced an entire population of Palestinian refugees that had already, the camp was set up in the early 50s for the 1948 refugees, but actually a lot of the refugees who were in that camp had already been displaced once in Lebanon from Tel Zatar camp, which had been depopulated and destroyed in the 1970s. So these were refugees in some cases now for the third time. And again, just without any there was this group that took up position in the Palestinian refugee camp in Nahar, but basically the war that was raged on the camp itself and on the residents was something that Palestinians in Lebanon especially, but elsewhere also have experienced before. And these experiences keep happening over and over, and I felt that there wasn't something that linked together or tried to look at what has been the collective Palestinian refugee experience and try to draw lessons out of that. And I also felt that, from a more political perspective, that the Palestinian leadership as it stands today, whatever leadership we want to consider, either by faction or as the PLO, whatever, seems not just incapable of helping, but also uninterested in helping. And that if there's going to be any kind of collectivity that gets organized moving forward as a Palestinian national movement that incorporates Palestinians all over the world, first we need to understand the experience that people have lived through in order to move forward. As we started making the film, another aspect or another issue that I learned was that in no place in the world can Palestinians study their own history. So textbooks in the West Bank and Gaza are, of course, the old Jordanian and Egyptian textbooks. In Jordan, it's the Jordanian government that creates the textbooks, and obviously the way Palestine is treated is very much from the Hashemite perspective. The same with Egypt, the same with Syria. In Lebanon, the actual chapter on Palestinian history has been removed from the textbooks. And even if you're a Palestinian refugee studying in an UNRWA school, UNRWA, of course, has to go by the national curriculum, so it doesn't get to design its own curriculum. And then if you're in the West, if you're or elsewhere, if you're a Palestinian and you get to college and you want to study, you take a course on Palestine at university. Most often the courses are studying the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or part of the broader Middle East. So you're studying your own history, whatever little bit of it you get, from a perspective or a prism of conflict or conflict resolution or just broader Middle East history and not specifically looking at Palestinian history. So that was, as this project developed, we felt it was a very strong need, was as an educational tool and a self-awareness kind of tool.
Where is this film being shown?
We are organizing screenings of the film around the world. We've done some screenings already in the U.S. and in Europe and in the Middle East. We're showing it in camps. We're showing it in universities. Soon we should have a deal with the Al Jazeera documentary network to be able to show it there. And what we're trying to do is to build out of just beyond just having screenings. The idea is that this film becomes the spark for discussion. So we're even trying to facilitate cross-border discussions among Palestinians and their supporters around the world using online technologies and a website and perhaps web conferencing and things like that.
Did that last project, I guess, about dialogue across borders, did that come out of something you observed while filming this?
The idea came out of the fact that one thing was we found that Palestinians in a given country don't often know that much about their countrymen in another setting. So, for instance, when we've shown the film or different parts of the film, and I show, for instance, episode 2, which deals with the various expulsions that Palestinians have experienced around the world over time. When we get to the part, for instance, and we're showing it in Lebanon, and we get to the part showing the expulsions from Germany or from Canada or the U.S., this is something people in Lebanon don't know that Palestinians experienced, and so it's an eye-opening thing. Even though they themselves have experienced much worse, it's still, in Lebanon they were like, oh man, those poor people, like those poor Palestinians who got kicked out of the U.S. after 9/11. And here they're just, this was even in Nahabad camp where they themselves had just been expelled and destroyed. So it's really eye-opening to understand, and especially also episode 3 dealing with the legal aspects of discrimination. Like certain cases are well known. Lebanon is a well-known case because so much research has happened in Lebanon, so much, academic work has been done in Lebanon. But for instance, Egypt actually is just as bad, if not worse, than Lebanon in terms of how Palestinian refugees are treated. So that's eye-opening. People don't know that. And in fact, I even know Palestinian refugees who've moved, when they've had to move to another country, have moved to Egypt thinking Egypt is a good place to be a Palestinian refugee, where in fact it's probably the worst place to be a Palestinian refugee, without papers, without documents, and whatever. So just kind of raising this awareness and level of education, among, and realizing that that doesn't exist. So that's first, but then secondly, to have these conversations. The younger generation I found, worldwide, the younger generation of Palestinians are hungry to be active, to be engaged, and are finding that the traditional venues for that are closed to them or are so disreputable or corrupted in some way that they don't want to be part of it. So there's a great desire for conversation, a great desire for discussion, for dialogue, for developing new strategies, but there isn't really a venue to do that.
Okay. So how could someone get their hands on a copy of Chronicles of a Refugee?
The film series is available at PalestineOnlineStore.com, and you just search for Chronicles of a Refugee. And we'll have our website up soon, also chroniclesofrefugee.org. So, and we're happy to set up screenings and, do whatever.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Adam.